class here. If you are panicking about your capstone, if you do not have a backend created yet, you are not as far behind as you think you are. So check out the Slack message that I posted. What you want to do is just give yourself the jump start, right? Give yourself a little bit momentum of what are all of the steps that we did to set up the chat backend and the blog backend and the to-do backend, and think about what we've gone over and over again, right? Make a new folder, npm init, create server.js, make our db.js, make our first model, get our first table up and running. That's what you want to do. Get that momentum going, because as soon as you do, all of a sudden it becomes much easier, right, to go front end, back end. I need to get information from the form in the front end to a fetch to the back end. The back end needs an endpoint that's going to do a .create on my model. I need to make sure I have my model. I need to make sure my model has the right table fields in it, the right columns in it. Okay, now that I saved it, send that back to the front end. Pause, pat yourself on the back. You just made something full stack. Now we got to prove it. So then on your home page or on a view page or whatever it is, all right, now I make a fetch request to go get that data. I go to the database. I have an endpoint to get that data. I .find all. I retrieve all of that information from my model. I then take that data, res.send it back to the front end. The front end is going to set it in state. And then I am going to map over that data and do a card or a table row or something to show all of that. That is going to get you over the full stack line. That is going to get you meeting all of the requirements. And then you get to do the fun stuff. And everyone's capstone is different. So your capstone might not have a form. It may have a search bar, right, where you are searching for items in the database. It may have lots of different options there, right? It doesn't always have to be a form, but hopefully that gives you an idea of, all right, if I can get over there, I am over the finish line for the capstone check-in on Thursday, and then it becomes a matter of all the fun stuff of, well, what features do I want to add? What is most important to get my end users enabled and excited to actually use my app? So, does anyone have any questions for the capstone check-in tomorrow? If you cannot make the capstone check-in tomorrow, which I encourage everyone to do, make sure you schedule a one-on-one with me. Unfortunately, I am not available on Friday and Saturday. I should have some availability on Sunday or early next week. But this capstone check-in is where we figure out what category you fall into. Are you falling into the I'm meeting all the requirements and I am on track to graduate? Am I at that step where I'm like, I'm almost there, I've got my backend created, I just need a little bit more help to get over the finish line? Or are we in that camp of, oh Lord, you are very far behind, what's it going to take to get you to that graduation line? That's where we want to figure out where you're at. That will also determine, by the way, if you get to keep your laptop or not. We have everything lined up with working solutions so that there is the potential for you to keep your laptop. But in order to be able to keep your laptop, you need to be able to graduate the program. So it is a domino effect here of, well, if you get to graduate, you get to keep a $1,200 laptop and a $100 monitor, which is a pretty good deal in my opinion. Little details that we've got to set up with that. There is a follow-up meeting. If you are on track to graduate and keep your laptop, we will get you details. You have to fill out a form and set up a meeting where you get to talk about not only the funding for your computer, but you also get access to another, I think it's $3,000 total. And then the laptop gets subtracted from that. But continuing education that you can do with that if you are interested in that. It's kind of free money. But more details of that coming probably on Tuesday. But got to be on track to graduate in order to be eligible to keep your laptop. That is all coming down the pipeline. Any questions? Blush.
I have a database related question.
Shoot.
If possible, can we see how we can like post at the same time a data to like different relational tables? For example,
Mhm.
okay, for example, like yeah, from yesterday's Shakura's example, like if you select like one category at the same time, similar categories get posted into a separate table, which
Mhm.
is using the foreign key ID thingy.
So, you're saying on the insert of the row, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, let's see, off the top of my head, let me see what I can do with that. So I've got everything opened from yesterday. I'm gonna, while I'm here, I might as well just create some new files here. Let me delete my node modules, front end, back end, duplicate, go to my day 3, close out my day 2 copies. Go to my front end. And my back end. I don't know why this just popped in my head, but if you have any money left on your PEX card for your stipend spending, try to spend that down by graduation. That is free money sitting out there for you. If you have any questions about that, feel free to shoot me a message. Okay, I'm going to open an integrated terminal. I'm going to go to npm start. Nope, npm install. I'm going to go to my backend, open an integrated terminal, npm install on that. I will drop some live share links for you guys because this is what we will be working on after Palash's question. Same goes here for the front end. And let me npm start on the front end after I npm start on the back end. Okay, so what you are able to do is when you run an insert command. So let's just, I'm not recommending that you follow along with this code. I'm just going to use this as an example. So let's say that when you make a new post, you want to automatically make a new comment on that post that says like, please subscribe to my blog for more updates or something like that. This post.create actually returns, I'm just going to call it creation details because I can't remember exactly what it returns. I'm hoping that it returns the ID. So I'm going to just go ahead and console log that out. Then I'm going to go to my new post and just say test post 1 and 2 and hit create post. And then I'm going to look in my terminal. And what comes out of my terminal, you can see there's this post.dataValues.id. This ID is what I can use to make some relational data related to that post that I just created. So what I can say is once we create that post, also create a comment. And whenever we're working with a database, good idea to make an await. Fun fact, yesterday, I spent 3 hours debugging code because I forgot an await command and ended up crashing my entire database server at work because I was trying to run 10,000 queries all at the same time instead of awaiting for those queries to finish. So that await keyword turns out very, very important. Don't forget it. So I await the creation. Because we await that, we get the creation details. We know the creation details has something called data values ID. So I am able to use those data values to say the post ID of the comment I am creating is my creation details dot data values dot ID. And then I am able to, and I got to go look at my comment model. My comment model has a content and an author field. So I can go ahead and say the author is like a bot and the content is yay, auto comments. Go ahead and save that in. And then to test it, I am going to make a new post. I'm going to say auto comment tester. Fill in some data, hit create post. And then when I go into my auto comment tester and hit read more, you can see my yay auto comments shows up. So that is an example of when we create, we can get back the details. The details includes this ID, and then we use that relational ID to create something associated with that comment or that ID. Does that help?
It does. And to take it like one level up, like if we have to like add the data to 3 tables at the same time, we just create another await database dot create, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you can chain these as long as you're awaiting the creation, you can get the ID of everything that got created and then create that chain down the line and use that ID consistently.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And that's a very common thing to do, by the way. Maybe not to do it in, well, I guess it is to do it in a table of a table of a table. But when we create that data, very common to relate it to whatever we just created. Other capstone questions. I would rather spend time in class tonight going over things that you are trying to get working in your capstones than I would just showing you additional features. And if you were saving it for a one-on-one, you are more than welcome to give it a try now, because chances are whatever question you have will be a good kick in the pants for someone else who's struggling with the same thing. Allie.
Okay, so I was working on this code like all night. Can't lie, like had some help from Chat GPT, but
Okay.
I got like I'm really like excited about what I have. So I'm gonna share my screen really quick. I'm not even
Go for it. We like excited.
okay. All right, so 1 second. Okay, here's that. Let me see. Okay,
All right,
yeah.
looking good. We got our database. We got our front end in React. We've got our database models set up with SQLize, liking all of that so far.
All right, so let me get this open.
Nope, careful, you got 2 M's. While you are doing all of that, I am curious, what has your Chat GPT experience been like?
Oh, it's been really great. Like it's so funny because even though like I've been up doing this, I don't know, like I'm really big on problem solving, so I actually didn't have a problem like asking it 1,000 questions to get like the desired result. But it was like pretty cool. I'm like, okay, and it taught me a lot. So like I had to ask for stuff that like I had to figure out. So I'm like, okay, I had to go back, look it over, then go back into Chat GPT and It's actually like really crazy.
Problem solving is, I think, probably the most important part of being an engineer. No, I take that back. I would say that's probably the second most important part. The first most important skill, I would say, is communication, right? So being able to be transparent and be like, look, engineering is just solving really complex problems, right? And being able to break it down into a small enough part where I can actually solve it and then move on to the next tiny little part. And then that's all engineering is taking all of those tiny little things that I can solve to get the bigger picture working. And so communication is really important to be able to work in a team and say, hey, we're all working on this problem. We need to be able to solve it all together. And we need to be able to say, hey, I can't solve this, or I am stuck here. How can we, work on this better? Then problem solving is the second most important thing. And I think you guys saw that yesterday, and have seen that through all of the debugging I've done in class. You've seen that through, Shakota's one yesterday was a great example of, all right, well, let's do this. And now that we got this working, now we want to do this next little part. And now this little part isn't working. How do we fix that and move on to the next one? So normally you would hear a lot of educators be like, don't use ChatGPT, that's cheating. I think we are in the wild west of AI and generative AI, and it's just a matter of finding out how it is most helpful to you. And if you are finding that it is helpful to you, by all means, continue to use it. And also don't be afraid to show in the workplace how you are using it. It's funny that you mentioned that, because as you're pulling up your windows, can you switch back to VS Code for 1 second for me?
Mm-hmm.
There is this GitHub Copilot right here that says supercharge your coding experience. If you guys are signed up for the GitHub Education Pack, which you guys get access to for free as CIC students, you get GitHub, some like pro version or GitHub student version of GitHub, and it includes Copilot, which is Microsoft's attempt at generative AI for your code. So it is kind of an interesting thing. It will like auto-complete code for you. And I just started using it about 2 weeks ago. Jury is still out of whether I like it or not. But it is very interesting to see that the code that it kind of generates for you, little snippets like use state or like an event with a prevent default, really, really kind of interesting. There is a link for the GitHub student pack. I posted it in CIC C5, but I'm guessing it is maybe sorry, go ahead, Allie, and I'll see if I can find that link.
No, you're fine. Okay, so this is what like I came out with. So like my buttons work here, and I actually got it to, I have like some test stuff in here, which is really funny. So the way that I set it up was like, there's one table in the database that like stores just the name, the date, and the title, because I wanted like all this stuff, like the rest of this, to be like in its own database. So then it moves everything over to here, like it stores the books themselves too, and then also like the main content for all the reports. So like the main,
Awesome.
the setting, stuff like that. And then I also think I'll create a table for the students and stuff, but I didn't want to like give myself too much to do because I was up for so long. I'm like, OMG. But yeah, so that's part of that. And then this was like the one part I was having an issue with. So on my view book reports page, I wanted it to look like little cards, like how it does in the blog.
Yep.
And I was trying to like look through the code, but I'm like,
All
it's
right. Let's get you there because you're really close. So I'm going to look at your backend to start. That sounds so wrong out of context. Sorry. I'm going to look at your backend code. And you got your server get book reports, which is finding all. This is ChatGPT-ish to me, but it might work. So we've used res.send, and res.send will include the 200 by default for you. But let's see if that is actually causing a problem or not on the front end. So I'm going to go to your reports page, and you're fetching your book reports, and then you're setting your data. So just to make sure this is working, I'm going to log out the data and make sure what's in there is what we expect to be in there. And if we look at the array, all of the data is there. So that means everything on the back end is correct. So that just means on your book reports map, you're doing your card. You're passing it in via a prop, which is cool. And then, ooh.
okay, yeah, this is where I was having like an issue. So like this was like where I
Do
stopped.
not like ChatGPT has gone off the rails. Don't know what Core UI is. Do you?
No, I was
Okay.
like trying to ask it stuff, and I'm like, I don't even. This was like the last piece that I got to, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna stop here.
Okay. So what have we used for a UI framework before, for user interface framework?
So I know we have like our bootstrap.
That stop, full stop, bootstrap. That's what we want. So I'm going to take all of this core UI out. Here's the problem. At some point, someone had a ChatGPT question and said, we use core UI at work. It works with React. Please generate out an interface using cards. And it generated out all of this stuff. And then ChatGPT was like, oh, I'm going to be helpful. You should use core UI. And you're like, but I've never used core UI before. What the heck is core UI? And it's causing you problems. So here's what's interesting. If we take out this, first of all, I want to console log your report here and make sure that the data is passing down via the prop. And it is. The right information is here. So what we can do is I'm going to kill this entire import. And that is, that is going to make your code scream bloody murder because it wants to use all of these components. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Bootstrap documentation, and we are going to look at their card. And in their card, they're going to give us all of this, right? And we're like, all right, this is cool, but I don't think you have an image, do you?
No.
So let's start with something a little bit more basic, the card with the card body. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to comment all of this out for now, just so we can reference it down the road. And then I'm going to paste that in and say, what's the most important part of the card? Just one little snippet. Probably the card.main characters to get started. So
Okay.
we're going to say in here, card dot I'm sorry, report.
Oh, that's coming from my if you go to the templates table, there's that one has like the title and author. I wonder if like you can pull that one.
So you've got it wired up to the book reports right now. So book reports in your backend is pulling the book report table. So that means that we have to pull the data from the columns in here.
Okay.
Your templates What were you thinking your templates were going to be?
So the template was just, the way that I imagined it was just the templates would just store all the information. And then once it got into, like, once all that came in, it would separate. But instead, the way that I wrote it is it separates itself so that the name, the date, and the title will get imported into the templates table, and then the rest of the information will get sent into the book reports table. So I'm just wondering if I should just, I last night I was wondering if I should just combine the two, but I wasn't really sure.
If it is what we call a one-to-one relationship where every template has one and only one book report associated with it, generally it's a good idea to combine the tables. The only time that we would want to break out into multiple tables if we said like one template has multiple book reports associated with it.
Yeah, no. So yeah, no. Then
So probably a good idea to combine the tables. I'm gonna let you attempt that though, just to get your cards working for now. And then you can always come back if you need help combining them. So
Okay.
because you've got your book report flow working already, I'm gonna use the fields in your book report. So I'm just gonna use report dot main characters for now. Main characters and save. And now we get that showing up. But you're probably, you wanted kind of a couple cards across.
Yeah.
So to do that, what we're going to do is we go up to where we map over all of the data, which is up here, and we put all of those in a row. And then in our card, we say, hey, each card should be a column with a 4, and now we've got that spacing going on.
Okay, yeah, it looks really good.
And from there, we can always go back to the documentation and go, oh, look, there's a card title. I want to use that. How do we do that? We just take this H5 and we use that in the card body. And then we could pull out something else like the setting. So we're going to say report.setting. And now we see that information show up as well. And all of that is lining up with the data over here.
Okay, that's perfect. And now that I've seen that, I think I know like how to go back and change it to get what I want.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome, awesome work. You were over the finish line for meeting all the requirements. Good work.
Yay.
I posted the link for GitHub Education in the meeting chat. Feel free to sign up for that. Danny, you had a question of other cursor options, but other than the hand. That's a quick and easy one for me to demo. So in our, I'll just do it in the homepage. We have seen for things like our button, we can do a style on this with a cursor of hand. And when is it cursor hand? The link that Doug posted is my go-to one. It gives you a breakdown of all of these. It's actually pointer that I wanted to use. A new hand wasn't right. So now if I save that and I go over to my homepage and I hover over my read more button, you get a little pointer hand. Well, if you scroll down enough in the link Doug posted, they give you a breakdown of all of these different things that you can use. And there are some really funky ones. Grab is a very popular one. It's kind of cool because if you hover over that row, they will show you a little example of that cursor actually in action. But not allowed is a very common one. So you can say not allowed here. And then when you go back over to your code and hover over, Oh, sorry, I'm on my search button. If you hover over the search button, they show you what that little not allowed looks like. I will say it is different on different operating systems. So if you're like, well, I really wanted that no sign, well, on the Mac, you can see my cursor right now is like a little pointer with the no sign underneath it. So it isn't consistent on all operating systems, but you should get something pretty similar to that. So like zoom in is a good one. So I can change this to zoom in and go back to my button and hover over the search, and I get a little plus icon instead. So pretty easy to change out those values and get the cursors that you're looking for. I will say it is one of the most annoying things, but I'm hovering over a link and the link doesn't change to the little cursor hand. I'm like, but can I really click on that? So it is common to definitely change this so that you get the if it is clickable to change it to the cursor hand. But lots of different options that you can play around with there. Kenny, very good point. Yes, you can copy and paste a giant snippet of code in and basically say defuck to ChatGPT and it will break it down for you. That is a very helpful tool. And the way that I kind of break things down, right, where I do all of my inline comments where I go, all right, this is first, this is second, this is third. ChatGPT takes that same approach and will break it down and go, all right, these 5 lines are doing the fetch, then we parse it, then we go into the next thing. So very, very helpful there. Brandy, I'm coming for you next. Do you have your code up?
Yes.
Go ahead, share screen. Plush, I
Okay.
just console logged. I said const creation details equals await the model.insert. Then I console logged those creation details to see everything coming back from the create. And then I was able to see that it was creation details.datavalues.id that was holding the information I was looking for. Brandy, whenever you are ready.
Today,
Okay, let me request remote. And can you take me to your browser first? What would you like help with?
So I was trying to get the images to pop up
Okay,
when press the button like we did before.
okay.
And I'm noticing that my numbers won't pop up. I have the files in and I'm sure it's a stupid little thing, but I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong with
Okay.
that too.
Let's do numbers first, just because that's probably going to be a quickie. In our
have-
numbers, you
I have files in
are
there.
your numbers.
They're in here, they're at the bottom.
Okay. And you have them in the right folder. I think it's going to be as simple as putting a slash in front of it.
Okay.
Let's see. You've got your num1, your num1.jpg. Oops, definitely. Nope. Definitely exists. Oh. Let's npm start this puppy. No. There you go.
Okay.
So
Cool.
just need to throw some slashes in there and that should fix it.
Okay.
Okay, for your that's the signs page.
Yeah.
And we are going to pull up the signs page over here. And so what you did have set up was, hey, when I click this input button, what should happen is it should figure out what the right file is to show on the right half of the screen and make that show up. But you did that in your vanilla JavaScript. So this is a really good example of how do we reactize our vanilla JavaScript to make it work in our React code. Do you happen to have the vanilla JavaScript handy?
I think I can do that actually.
If you don't, it's not a big deal. Are all three of those signs video files? Let me just see if you've got it in here, because if you do, I probably don't need it. Yeah, you got them here. Never mind. I'm good. I can show you what's going on.
Okay.
So, we have our on change. We still need that on change, but we convert it into React by giving it the curly braces instead of the quotes.
Okay.
Then we say option selected. We've got to define that somewhere. So we are going to define that above our return, because anything above our return is where the party happens in our JavaScript. We are going to get our event. And we are going to say the selection is equal to the event target value. And then we'll just log out that selection to get started. And hopefully we are going to get the value of how are you, nice to meet you, whatever. So I go back to your code, I pop open the console, I clear whatever's in there, and I click on a bullet, and nothing happens. Because our events in React are camel cased. Now I click on a button and I get out whatever button I clicked on. So that's good progress. Now, what do we know about data that the user is interacting with? What React concept do we use for that? Not a city, but state. Okay, so we are going to say import our useState from React. Then we are going to say const selected sign and set selected sign are going to useState, and we start out with a empty sign. And then we are going to say set the selected sign to the selection that is having a stroke while I type. That is coming from the event target value. So I can take my selection out. And then because we are using the on, well, let's see if React will let me get away with that. So now that we set that in, we've got to make this selected sign get used somewhere, right? So what we're going to do, you've got a row set up here and all of your stuff in a column. You even have a column set up for the MP4. So now we just have to make that work. And I don't know that I can do that off the top of my head. I need to go, I'm pulling up W3 schools on my other monitor and just doing a search for video so I can reference what it's supposed to be. Okay, so video, then inside of here, we put in a source tag and the type is video MP4. And then the SRC is going to get generated by whatever we have in the selected sign plus this file name over here. So you basically do a signs dash whatever your selected sign is dot MP4. So I come back over here, I click what's your name, nothing happens and the world hates me. Okay, let's see if I open, if I take a look at what's inside this MP4, there's a video tag with our source and our signs, nice to meet you.mp4. Oh, you know what? I probably need a slash in front of it, and it's in the capstone ASL -mp4 file or folder. So I need to get that path right in there. That should have worked. If I open this and go in a new tab to localhost and paste that in, I do get the video file, so that's not the problem. It might be that I have to specify a width on this. So let's do a width. Why can I not type tonight? My God, 100%. And I forgot an extra
Wild
curly.
with problems.
Nope, everything hates me. Why is... I think your CSS is out to kill me. With video contain ID. What? What? Why?
I don't know.
Course. I don't know. Does it not like this self? No, it's got to be self-closing. It's in React. All right. What if I do? Width is like 300. Does it need? Is it that picky? The fuck?
I feel better about not being able to get it to work now. Much better.
Max, what if you try making the source like an absolute path to a video just to see if a video will show up? Yeah,
I would be up for trying that. The problem is that the URL right here, if I copy that URL and just say like open a new tab, the
Oh,
video
yeah.
loads. So the SRC is correct. And it is a video MP4. Does it need height with it as well? Let's try and make this a number.
It doesn't matter whether you put a dot before the slash, does it?
It shouldn't be a dot because we want it to be relative to whatever the public folder is, which is always at the root. So I don't
okay.
actually want
Gotcha.
it to be relative. Source is supposed to be spelled out here, and then SRC here. I'm missing something dumb. Oh, I've got an idea. What if we say only show this video tag if there is a selected sign? Because when the page first loads, don't show any video. But then when we click on a bullet, boom, baby, it loads. Okay, so the browser was doing something dumb. It wasn't making, oh, and now the video isn't even changing. Son of a, okay.
I don't think it's playing either. It's just showing. It's like it exists.
Okay.
You
Two
need
what we can do to fix that is say whenever an option is selected, clear out whatever the selected sign is. This is because the browser doesn't like a changing source tag down here. So we do something kind of hacky with it. We say make the selected sign just go away. And then when we do set the new selection, set it to whatever the new value is. So it kind of unloads the video and then reloads the video, if that makes sense at all. And then on this, we can also put in your controls. And then I think we should also be able to get away with a style width of 100% so that it takes up the full area. Okay, now we change it.
Can we also set the audio to automatically be, there was a way to do that, but I don't remember what it was. Like automatically turn off the sound or whatever.
Mm-hmm. All right, this is gonna be a pain. Nope, set timeout. Video tags are not necessarily the most React friendly. So we end up doing something kind of hacky. We say whenever it changes, set it to null. What was happening without this set timeout was it was clearing the video, and then React realized that you were setting it to something new and didn't unload the video. So what I ended up doing here was saying, and this is only because I've worked with React and audio tags all the time, and React audio tags are similar to the browser, like wants to fight React in terms of how responsive it is. So what we end up doing is saying, clear it out. So as if nothing was selected, wait 200 milliseconds, so a fifth of a second, then set in whatever the new selected sign is here. That ends up saying, oh, you're setting it to null, so unload this entire video so it doesn't exist. And then a fifth of a second later, go set whatever the new video is that triggers it to load. The no audio thing, what we ended up doing, was we said,
there's a muted attribute for video.
Oh, that's even easier than whatever the crap we did with an onload.
And there's autoplay and loop.
If we just set muted to true.
I think you can just write muted. Although I don't know if it's different in React.
You can, I just like being more explicit. Yep, and then that is now muted.
Nice.
So we change it, it loads, it stays muted, and then we can play the video.
Cool. Thank you.
Hopefully that shows someone, hey, when I select this value on the page, I want data somewhere else to change. We had to get a little hacky there with that set timeout, but that's only because it's a video tag. So if it were anything else, any other content, React would have controlled the virtual DOM and changed all of that out. It's only those video tags that get to be a little tricky.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Good work. Who else has capstone questions, or did anyone else post in the chat and I missed it scrolling by? flush.
Can you please add a live share links? I still can't get it right.
Yep. It is commented out in my code. But it is this little snippet here. I did creation details. Then I did my create and use the creation details data values ID. Anyone else have capstone questions? Do we want to see how to add admin pages to the front end? Or to the blog project? Going once for any capstone questions? Going twice? Kenny, do you want help on your map? Or are you still working on it? Sure, go ahead.
You hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. So I know it's supposed to go here.
Okay.
The code. I remember when you had like that one-on-one, we did the stuff. I tried to, replicate the code somewhat.
Yep.
Made it into like the explore map JavaScript, but it wasn't working. So I just kind of just deleted whatever I had there. So I wasn't sure what would be your thought process to get started on this.
Is it working in that other page for the results?
Yeah, so when you go back home, so you say you type in Syracuse, it just goes straight to results page right there. So it's working here.
So I would replicate, let's just go through the page here. What we end up doing is this Google Map component is what's controlling everything, right? So this is what we've got to get working, but there's so much tied to this that you kind of got to figure out, okay, what is everything going on here? Well, there's this onload function that's doing something with the set map. So I know I'm definitely going to need this use state. There's this on mount or on unmount, which is getting fired out right here. So I'm also going to need that right next to the onload. And then the other thing that happens, this use.js API loader, we're going to need that API key so Google knows I'm allowed to use the maps. And then the only other thing going on here was this is the latitude and longitude that we did from, hey, when the search results come in, we're going to use those details. So what you would need to figure out is, do I want to hard code it to a latitude and longitude? Do I want to have an array of a bunch of different latitude and longitudes? And every time I hit explore, it maybe takes me to another random map. You could make it tied to a drop down and say, here are the 10 areas we recommend exploring. And then when they pick one of those drop downs, it updates the map to that location. Lots of different ways that you could get started. But because this is pretty lightweight, I would recommend taking everything inside of this results component, pasting it into your explore, and then figuring out how you want to control where the map is showing based off of whatever user experience you want.
Yeah, I tried doing that and it gave me like an error, so I wasn't sure. Let me
It
see.
should. The only other thing you got to be careful of is that your imports are coming over.
Mhm.
and that you've adjusted for your latitude and longitude. So if we paste everything in here, we need to make sure that our imports are all coming over. And then you will, import, export may only appear at the top level. I missed the curly brace down at the bottom. There we go. Now when we go back over to, where is, oh, okay.
This is
When we go to explore, nothing is loading, but that is because if we do our location, you'll see that this latitude and longitude are really what is coming over and making it work. So if I copy all of this, oh, I got an extra S, and then go back to your explore page, nothing will load. But if I put in those parameters, you'll see the map actually loads. It's because it's pulling the data from up here. So that's what you would have to adjust. If we set in your explore map, if we're like, oh, we are always going to start the longitude at this -76 number, and your latitude at whatever this 43 number is. Now, when we paste that in, even if we take this out of the URL, it's still going to load in to Syracuse.
Okay, sounds good.
So now you can start playing around with, maybe I want an array of 10 different locations. Maybe I will do a drop down, and the drop down values are going to have the latitude and longitude in them. And then when that changes, I can set the state and kind of go from there. Good?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. That's all I really needed help with.
Awesome. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into our admin page unless anyone else has capstone questions. Okay. We are going to pick up where we left off with yesterday's code. So these live shares are in the chat at 6:27. If you want to follow along, you are welcome to join those live shares. But where we left off is we already did some cool stuff with our login, right? So our new post page is only accessible if we are signed in. But we run into this problem. We're actually going to get author working before we do. Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Give me 1 second. I need to look at the clerk documentation. Yeah, like. So there's documentation that says that we can use this clerk client.users.getUser and pass in the user ID to get more information about the user. But in order to do that, we would need to get our clerk client working. So I'm going to go to their overview, and clerks, Next.js, and Node SDKs give us a backend SDK for using server environments only. That's okay, right? Because we've got our server set up. So they give me all of these things. Do they tell me? Nope, no getting started. No. Oh, there was a link here. Backend SDK, clerk backend. Aha. Okay. So we're going to npm install our clerk backend. I'm going to switch to my backend. I'm going to npm install my clerk backend. Then it says I've got to import it. So I will copy that. I will go up to the top. I will paste in my import. Then it says I've got to make an instance of it. So I'm going to do that right underneath all of our middleware. And now I got to go get my API key. So I'm going to go to my clerk. I'm going to go to my dashboard. I'm going to open up my blog. I'm going to go to my API keys. I am going to copy. I'm actually going to copy and head over to it's actually the secret key that I want. So I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to put that in as my string. Someone remind me at the end of class to go invalidate this API key. Paste in this. So you want to be careful. This API key should never be exposed to an end user, right? So if we're sharing our screen and hypothetically posting a video on YouTube, we should not be exposing this API key. So it's actually very common to move that into its own file. In fact, let me show you how to do that just for some security. I'm going to do a new file, and I'm going to say clerk API key .js, and we actually did something very similar to this for our API URL. We put our API URL in one file, imported that in all of the different files we're using it, and now we've got one place to update it. So what we can do is we say export default, and I'm going to throw in that API key from right here. And now, because I'm exporting it, I can close this. And hypothetically, if I never open that again on a screen share, it's going to be a little bit more secure. Now, you do want to be careful if you are publishing to a public repo on GitHub, because if you now commit all of that code in and push it up to GitHub, GitHub is like, ooh, there's some JavaScript file here. I'm going to share that API key with the world. So here's what we do. We import our clerk API key from our /clerk API key.js. We can use that clerk API key down here when we pass in the information, but I don't want this checked in to Git. I want to tell Git to ignore this file because I don't want it to be part of my public repo. Well, believe it or not, it is as simple as creating a file called git ignore. You make sure that it is up at your root level. You don't want it hiding inside some folder. And all we need to do is tell it to ignore my clerk API key.js. Now Git knows hands off. I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to add it. I'm going to pretend like that file doesn't exist. When you commit all of your other code in, now it is a little bit more secure because that secret is protected with our git ignore file. Make sense? Okay, now that I've got all of this set up, what I can do is I can say, hey, when I go through and do all of the middleware stuff to get the clerk user ID, what I would also like to do is go to my clerk that we just set up right here and await. Oh, I need to make it async so that I can await. Async up here. And now I can say await, and I'm going to call it user details. And I'm going to move this down here. See why in a second. Await my clerk.users.getUser, and I'm going to pass in the user ID that's coming from my decoded. What was my decoded? My decoded was when we went up to the token that they passed in, used the public key, and got the user details out that were sent in from that token. So I come down here, I save. I'm going to throw my user details into my rec.auth. And because we are calling this new post right here, where we're validating our user token middleware, what I should be able to do is log out my console.log rec.auth and see the information in there. So I'm going to pause if you're following along in 1 second. Let's test this first. So I'm going to go to my localhost. Everything's going to blow up because I'm not running my backend server. So I need to npm start that. Refresh. Go make a new post. Testing auth. ABC 1 2 3. I'm going to hit my create post button. And now I come over to my console and I see what's going on over here. Now you can see, hey, these were the details that came out of the token, but you'll notice that my email address isn't in here, nothing fun is in here, just this user ID. But because we told our middleware to go to Clerk and get the details of that user, when we scroll down a little bit, we can see this user details, which we used right here, includes all kinds of interesting information like my profile URL and things like my first and last name, and even things like my email address. That's pretty cool. We aren't using any of that data yet, but because Clerk has all of that information from my Google account, which I connected in, it can get access to that information right here. And because Clerk is using sign in with Google, you'll notice it also does not include my password. That's a very security conscious feature of Clerk. Google is saying, we know that this user is validated. We confirm their password. You don't need to worry about what their password is. We're just going to give you access to all those user details. I'm going to pause there. Is anyone following along with me, or are you all along for the ride? I've reached the point where I've gone too fast for you all. It's okay. Hopefully this is good reference code so that you can come back, see this video, see how we did it, and reference it in GitHub. Okay, cool. That means I don't need to pause every couple lines of code. All right, so we get our user details in, we load it into the rec.auth, and then we call the next thing in that function. Well, what's going on? The validate user token is what is loading up our rec.auth, and then the next is going into our rec.res and giving us access to the auth right here. Well, we have in our post, let me go look at our post. We don't have any details about the author here, but I think it would be pretty cool to store in whoever created that post. So I'm going to add a new column here called author, which is going to be a data type .string. Then, because this table has already been created, I can't just assume that that column got created for me. The only way that I could get SQLize to auto-generate that column for me would be to drop the entire table and to start my backend again. But I don't really want to do that. I've got some really clever posts in here that I don't want to delete. I'm kidding, they're all junk. But if they weren't, we would need to be able to update that. Now, in a more production flow environment, there's actually a concept called a migration in SQL. And what we do is when we run a migration, we execute some SQL that is going to migrate our existing tables to the new table format that we want to use. And in fact, most ORMs, or object relational mappers, SQLize, typically have migrations built in. Oddly enough, it isn't built into SQLize. You have to install another package and go through all of that. And it's kind of a pain to get set up. So instead, we cheat a little bit. We just go to our beekeeper. We connect into our local database. We change to the blog project. And then we go to our post table, pop open our structure, and go, hey, we're just going to add a new table here, or new column here called author. And we're going to leave it as a varchar. We'll leave it as nullable, and we will hit apply on that. Palash, sorry, I will stop hijacking your... Oh, no. I'm not hijacking. Oh, I am hijacking. There you go. That should fix that. Okay. So now when we create a new post here, I am going to include the author, and I'm going to pull the author from my rec.auth. And then I need to look in my user details, and I'm going to extract out the user's first name with a space in between and the author's last name. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save on that. I come back over to my Chrome. I make a new post and say ABCDEF 1, 2, 3. I hit create post. I open up my ABC 1, 2, 3 DEF and check out what shows up. My name now shows up as that author. Now we might go off the rails here for a second. I'm going to try, I've never created a user account in Clerk, so I'm going to sign out. I'm going to try and make a new post. It says no account sign up, so I'm going to go ahead and sign up for that. I am going to put in an email and a password. And hit continue. QWERTY 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 apparently is not a secure password. All right, let's make it super secret. No, super secret apparently has been used in some breach. Careers in code rocks. Ah, that password has not been taken. And it emailed me a verification code. And it took me right into my new post. But you notice I did not set my first name and last name. So I am wondering if I go to Clerk and look at my blog under my user. I can do email, phone number, username. I can also set a name for my user. So that's what I want. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and I'm going to make it required instead. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue on that. Now, because I already created my user account, I'm going to delete that user and then try again. So I'm going to close out. I'm going to reopen my front end. I'm going to go to my new post. I'm going to sign up for a new account. I'm going to do my max@zane.tech and my careers in code rocks password. I'm going to hit continue. I'm going to get another verification code. I'm going to enter that 797928. That brings me into, oh, it didn't ask me for my first name. Email, phone, password, name, settings, require, continue. Ah, there's an apply changes down at the bottom. So if you're changing your Clerk, make sure you hit apply changes down at the bottom. So that means I have to go do this whole thing again. Sorry. Delete, React. Go back to my home page. Go down, new post, sign up. Aha, now I've got my first name and my last name set up. I can say something like different author. Create the post. And when I open up that some different author, you can see different author because I created the user under that different name. So, couple steps. We install the clerk on our backend. We set up our clerk backend to use that API key that we got from the clerk dashboard, and we created that in a separate file. We modified our token middleware a little bit to say, hey, once we've validated the user and gotten their token information, go use that clerk package that we installed and set up, use the API key, and get the user details from clerk. Then store those user details in our rec.auth. That now means that wherever we use our validate user token middleware, we are able to store the user's first name and last name based off of those user details that we happen to get from clerk. And if we look in our database, we can see in the post table that we are actually storing in the author's information in the database. Right here. Interesting, helpful for anyone? Now that we get access to all of these details, after the break, we will be able to set up a users table, which is going to keep track of information like whether or not they are an administrator or not. Go on break, be back at 7:20, and we will get the users table set up and some admin pages. Yes, Kalash.
Oh, okay.
Did anyone have any capstone questions that popped up over the break? Can't say I haven't given you plenty of options to be prepared for tomorrow's check-in.
I do.
Shoot.
You have time to help me with a possible save button on my recipes?
Sure. I would love to, because I think it will be a great example for everyone else to see something similar.
Okay, hold on a second. And didn't you and Doug want to do a little something extra with that animation?
No, I think it's in pretty good shape.
You're fine with it? Okay. All right. Okay, let's go to the code. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can. So
Okay,
where are you at? What have you added so far?
Okay. If you want me, honestly, I just got off work. If you want me to do that first, and I'll schedule a one-on-one.
That's fine.
And I
Or
will do first.
we can do it tomorrow after the capstone check-in. That's also fine. Take a look at the steps I posted in Slack, because I want you to give it a try on your own. But if you go to the C5 channel, I did a basic breakdown. Now, keep in mind, I did this as an on submit for a form. So your first couple steps are going to be a little different because it's going to be a button that you're saving as opposed to a form that gets submitted. But the rest of the steps should be pretty similar in terms of everything that needs to get done to save it and show it.
Okay, so let me try it first then. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have a question? Apologies in advance. My dog has decided to chew on a bone. So if you hear anything in the background, sorry. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. So I was snooping around in the Clerk documentation because this is the first time that I've used Clerk. And oftentimes what we will do is we'll actually make a table called user, right? And we'll assign a user some ID in our database, and then we can keep track of that user everywhere. But Clerk is actually pretty cool because we can not only get access to all of that user data, but we actually have access if we head over to clerk.com and take a look in the dashboard. We can see all of our users in here. And then if I open up one of these users, there's this area all the way down at the bottom called metadata. And there are 3 different kinds of metadata. There's the public metadata, which is basically saying like, hey, if a user sets a profile image, we want other users to be able to see that data associated with the user. There is the private metadata, which is saying, hey, only your admin should be able to update this, right? The user won't be able to change their private metadata directly, but this is a place where you can store some information about them, and they won't be able to see access to it. And then there's the unsafe metadata as well, in terms of, hey, this is something that the user can probably change on their own. And you can actually pop open the link to the documentation and see that there is a breakdown that shows both types are set from the backend API, but public metadata can be accessed from the front end API as well. Well, we actually want them to be able to access it from the front end, right? We want our front end to be able to know whether or not they are an admin. So that's what we're going to use. I'm going to go to my dashboard. I'm going to edit the public metadata, and it's just JSON in here, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set something called admin to true. And because it's JSON, it's got to be in quotes. I am going to go ahead and hit the save button. And now I have just made that person an admin. Well, because we've already integrated our user details here, I should be able to see that data in our rec.auth. Let's see how that comes through. So I'm going to go to my front end. I'm going to sign out, sign in with my Google account. I'm going to go to my Gmail. I'm going to do a test, ABC, 1, 2, 3. I hit create post. And if I scroll down to the bottom of my console, I can now see in my user details, there is this public metadata of an admin true. So it is as simple as coming up here and saying, all right, I'm going to make a new middleware called admin required. And that's going to get my rec, my res, and my next. I'm going to add that admin required to my new post flow right here. And I am going to say, if the rec.auth.userdetails.public metadata, because I'm lining that up with what's coming out of my user details, .admin equals true, then go ahead and move on, let that user create the post. Else, res.send back a status of 401, which is an unauthorized error code, and send back something like an error that says admin auth required. Now I save that. I come back over to my front end. I'm going to sign back in with my admin account that I flagged in Clerk. I'm going to say A1, 2. I'm going to hit create post. Everything worked. My post got created down here. That's good. But now I'm going to sign out, make a new post. I'm going to sign back in with my email and the password. Did I forget my password? Damn it, I forgot my password. All right, well, let's see if I forgot.
The careers and code thingy thing.
Yeah, do you remember? Was it careers in code? No.
Was it careers and code rules? I thought I remembered a Z in there somewhere.
Rocks?
Maybe that's it.
Oh, good memory, Doug. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm on my new post page. I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna say test 1, 2, 3 ABC. I hit create post, and I get this thing that says undefined. Like, what the? And I hit OK. You notice that whatever I just typed in there, I'll do it again. Hacker post, not an admin. Admin, I am not. When I hit create post here, you'll see that it's taking me back to the home page and it's not actually creating that post. That's pretty cool. How is that working? It's because it's looking in my user details and it's looking at my user over here in my dashboard. Because I am signed into this different author account, when I look down in the metadata, you'll see I do not have that set to admin. But when I'm signed over into my Google account, you can see my admin is set to true. All right, that's all really cool. But if that's the case, and I'm enforcing that on my backend, I really shouldn't be allowed to get to my new post page unless I am signed in as an admin. So there are two ways of doing that. We are going to go to our new post page. And we already are using this thing called use auth. I'm also going to use a new one called use user. And I'm going to say const user equals use user. Then console log my user out. And when I pop open in the console, I can see I've got this object in here, and my object has is loaded, is signed in, and the user details I'm looking for. And in those user details, I've got all of these different functions in here, but one of them is my public metadata. And if I open my public metadata, I do not have admin set. I don't have admin set because I'm not signed into that admin account. I'm signed into my regular user account. So what I can now do is say, if I go look in the user data at the public metadata, and I go look for admin. If I am not an admin, then I want to navigate to the home page. So I go ahead and I save that. I put my exclamation point in the wrong spot. The exclamation point is saying not in my if statement. I go ahead and I save that. I head back to my page. I'm on my home page. I go down to my new post. That surprisingly did not work. it because... No, it's true. I wonder if that needs to be in a use effect. Because we want it to happen when the page loads for the first time. So let's try moving it into there and seeing if that fixes it. Okay, that fixed it. So React didn't like my navigate to because the page hadn't loaded for the first time. So by moving it into my use effect and saying only run this when the component first loads, I am now able to say, go check to see if they're an admin. If they're not an admin, navigate them to the home page. So we come back to Chrome, we go to our new post button, and it just takes me back to the home page. Well, really what it's doing is it's taking me to the new post page, detecting that I'm not an admin, and redirecting me to the home page. That's good, but I just don't want this new post button to show up unless the person is signed in is an admin. It's important to do it both ways though, because if we don't do it in here, the user could just type in a / go to the new post page and get access to it. The backend would prevent them from actually posting it, but they could still get to my new post page. So we actually need to do it in 3 places. The first place we do it is we go, hold up. When new post comes in, not only make sure they're signed in, also make sure that they are an admin. If they aren't an admin, send them back an error code, say that you're not allowed to do this. That is protecting us at a postman level. That's protecting our API call from going through in the first place. Then we also need to protect the page and say, hey, if the user signed in is not an admin, navigate them back to the home page. And the last place we do it is in our home page. We get access to the user already. We've already done our use user. So what we can do is go down to this link and say, hey, if the user dot public metadata dot admin, if they are an admin, make that link show up. Otherwise, don't show anything. So I go ahead and I save that. I come back over here. You'll notice my new post button is gone. But if I sign out, if there is a user and their public metadata is set to an admin. Okay, now I sign out, nothing shows up. I don't have a sign in button. Logic just shot myself in the foot. Okay, if they're... All right, now we get into a tricky spot because we've got signed in users and not signed in users. So what we want to do is we want to say, if there is a user and they are admin, or there is not a user, we need to give them a... Let's do it like this. That logic is getting really messy in there. So let's say if there is a user and there's an admin, give them a new post button. If there is not a user, then give them a link to sign in. I like that approach a little bit more. Okay, no user signed in. I have a sign in button. I hit sign in. I don't know what that error was, but we're going to ignore it because it took me to the login screen. I'm going to continue with Google. I'm going to pick my Gmail account. Oh, that's not my new post. There is... I am filled with so much regret right now. I've broken everything. Okay, sign out, sign in, go to Google, go to my Gmail. Okay, so Tara, shout out to you. Explain what you're thinking as things aren't working. This is exactly what we want to debug here. So what I believe the issue is that after I sign in and I take them to the new post page, the problem is this user hasn't loaded in yet, right? So I hit the sign in button, it's taking me back to my app, but my app hasn't really gotten the user information yet that I have signed in. So the new post page is redirecting me to the home page because the full sign-in flow hasn't happened yet. That is obviously less than ideal. So I wonder if I can change my flow up here a little bit. I'm wondering if I can take them to a sign-in, link them to the sign-in page. After the sign-in happens, it's going to redirect them to the home page. The home page is going to see that they are a user and that they are an admin, and it's going to make the new post show up. Does that make sense to absolutely anyone other than myself? Okay, so let's try that. I'm going to sign out. I'm going to sign in. I'm going to continue with Google. Brings me back to my home page. My home page now has a new post button. When I click on new post, it shows up. So everything's good there. I can go back to my home page and sign out. When I sign in with my other account and hit continue, and careers in code rocks. Now I sign in, and you notice my new post button is not here because that is only accessible to admins. That means that because we have all of that, we can set it up so only signed in users are allowed to comment. So I'm going to do that as that one last example, and then I think we should have covered all auth flows. Before we do that, does anyone have questions about what we've covered so far, or want me to go back over a section we've already done?
Can we just review it one more time? So
Yep.
we don't want the new post to show up unless they're an admin
And they are signed in, yes.
and they are signed in.
So what we do is we say, hey, if there's not a user, show them the sign-in link. If there is a user signed in, check to see if they're an admin. And if they are, then show them the new post link. If there is any user signed in, doesn't matter if they're an admin or not, show them the sign out button. Do you want me to go over more than that section?
No, I guess I'm just confused why we don't want them to be able to post, like why we took that option away. Is this maybe it's just for demonstration purposes? I don't know.
This is
I'm
saying
just confused about it though a little bit.
Yeah, so let's take a step back on that. It's a good question. What we want to do is we want to identify what are our user levels and what are each one of those users allowed to do. So it's very common to have a regular user and an admin user, but there are times that we want to set up multiple user roles, right? We may say, hey, you can, like if you think about Google Docs has 3 levels. You can either not be allowed to view the document at all. You can be a viewer on the document where you aren't allowed to make any changes. You can be a commenter on the document where you can view the document and add comments, but you can't add changes. And then you can be an editor, right? Which means you can do everything, all of the above. In our blog, what we're setting up is saying, hey, you can either not be not signed in at all, at which point you can read the posts, but you probably shouldn't be allowed to comment, and you probably shouldn't be allowed to make a new post. You could sign in, and if you sign in, you're allowed to make a comment, but still not allowed to make a new post. Or if you're an admin, you can make a comment, but you should also be able to make a post. That is just theoretical, right? You could say, hey, I don't want, I just want signed in users to be able to do stuff. And then if they're not signed in, they're not allowed to do this. That's fine. That's just two different user levels. So you can set it up however you want based off of however many users are using your application. Did that help clear it out a little bit?
It did. I mean, I guess I'm just wondering if they're not signed in and they should be able to view the posts, why can't they view the posts without signing in? Like, why is it automatically making you sign in?
They can. If we sign out and refresh our homepage, all the
Okay.
posts stay here.
All right, I missed that other. So okay,
They just have an option to sign in down at the bottom.
okay.
And Max, right now, the only thing that a signed in user who's not admin can do is sign out.
Correct. We haven't actually implemented it. What I want to do is change it so that when we go here, this whole comment thing doesn't show up if they aren't signed in. And that is as simple as going to our read page and saying, hey, we want to pull in the user from clerk. We want to get the user information from user. And then what we want to do is say, all the way down here in our form, if there isn't a user, then don't show them. Actually, if there is a user, show them the form. Otherwise, hide it. So I go back over here. I don't have the form. I go back to my home page. I sign in with either my regular user account or my admin user account. And now if I go to read more, I can see the form. That may seem like the only place we need to do it, but we have to remember, where do we authenticate? 3 different levels. At the front end, we can hide or show the form. If they shouldn't be able to get to the page at all, we need to do that in the front end at a second level. In this case, they should be able to get to the form. They should be able to get to the page, but not just the form. So because they are allowed to be on this page when they're not signed in, we don't need to navigate them away. We don't need to redirect them. But what we do need to do is in the back end, we have our post comment right here that we don't want anyone to be able to do. So what we need to do is add in our middleware to say, validate the user token. Make sure that someone isn't actually making an API call without going through our front end without being signed in. So this is just protecting our backend to say, even if they do somehow find a way to get to our form, or even if they do send an API call to us directly, we still want to make sure that they're signed in, because we never trust the front end, right? The user could go to Postman and make that request. We don't want to let that happen. So we also validate on the back end. Still want to do it on the front end, still want to hide the form, still don't want to let the user do it. But even if the user does find a way to do it, like in Postman, we lock them out on the back end as well. And just like that, that should be enough. And even if we make a comment here by some user and post, ooh. You know why? Because in our front end, when we make the new post, we are, nope, we are passing in their token. Read 90. No, comment 401 unauthorized. Why was that unauthorized? Signed in. I want to make a comment. I post. I'm unauthorized. Because in my read, when I am posting my comment, I'm not including my token here. So that's a good reminder of whenever we are sending something to the backend that requires authorization, we also need to do our get token, which is going to come in from our clerk. Our clerk use auth. Which comes from our clerk use auth. And now that we are getting the token to post the comment, we need to include that token in the headers. So TLDR on that, whenever we use this validate user token middleware, whenever we are protecting a route on our backend, so only a signed in user or an admin user can do that, we also need to go to our front end and add in our token so that the backend knows the details about what user is signed in. So let me refresh on that. Now I can say comment some person, hit post. And now we crash the back end. Rec body post ID. Post ID, ID. D coming from the use params. Oh, come on. That should have worked. Rec body post ID. Body post ID.
What is the current error, Max?
This is crashing because the rec body post ID is empty. So if I do a test and I say ABC and I hit post, it's saying that in, oh, well, my post ID is there. So it's crashing on here and it's saying where parameter key has undefined value. But I'm wondering if that is happening instead of it happening here. I wonder if it is happening after we do the response. We set the post to whatever the new comments are.
So would it be worth mapping over the comments?
I think I'm going to console log our rec.body here and see what's making it through to the back end. And It's an empty object, which makes me think, it's an empty object because I added in these headers here, but these headers are overwriting these headers here, which is telling my backend that my application JSON is in the body. So I broke it. That should be all one big header in here. Reboot my backend, reboot it here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I hit post. Okay. That's working now. What are you mad at? Cannot read properties of undefined. Read 112. Read 112. Going over my comment replies. So I'm just going to say if there are comment replies, you can map over them. If the comment dot replies exists, then map over it. There we go. And now my new posts show up. The other way we could have done that is say, hey, when you post a new comment, also include the comment replies. And if we did that, I believe we wouldn't have to include this conditional. Yeah, that also fixes the problem. And the new post shows up right here. So the problem was that when we made a new comment in the database, we sent back the comment, but the problem was the front end was expecting the comment replies to be included with it. Comment replies was a feature that we added after we made our initial comment post show up. So what we had to do is say, hey, because the front end is expecting there to be replies with the original comment that we created, we also need to send back in the comment reply when we make a new comment. And that fixed the issue. Okay, that was a lot of new code. I know a lot of you are planning on going back and reviewing this video. I would like you to all take a look at the live share. Take a look at just one snippet of what we have done tonight, whether that is authenticating it so comments, only you can see the comments, whether that is checking the sign-in and seeing how we made an admin page work, whether that is reading through the admin middleware. Just take one piece of it tonight that you are hoping to integrate into your capstone. You aren't required to, but that you want to apply. See if you could read through that code enough to add your own comments to it. If you can, you're good to go. If you can't, you should be asking questions at this point, because I know what's going to happen is you're going to go back to this video, you're going to go through it all, and you're going to have questions then and not have the opportunity to ask them. So spend a couple minutes right now going through the live share. I'm also going to post this up to GitHub right now. And that way you can review it on GitHub as well. And I'm going to post the link to that in the chat. take a couple minutes, read through this code, see if you have questions on either the front end or the back end.
I have a question. Or can we just review how after we receive the error message, how we link the error message from the rec dot body to the empty key to the comments?
So you're saying,
Like when we were going through the debugging portion, when we first got the error message and when we decided to console log out the rec dot body to kind of see,
yes,
like,
yes.
how do we go from that to from
Yeah.
the back end back to the front end back to the back end?
Great question. So I'm gonna put it back to the way it was when it was broken, so that we can see the error message again and debug that. That was in read when we made the comment. We did post comment, and what we initially had, which we now know is wrong, is this. Okay, so what ended up happening was we went to our front end, we hit the post button, and we got this cannot read properties undefined reading map. I'm like, okay, don't really know what's going on here, but chances are when something breaks in the front end, especially right after an API call, chances are something also broke in the back end. So I go over to my back end. Why didn't that break? Oh, you know why? Because I think the order matters.
And just to refresh right there, was the header, is it fine coded out like that, or does it need to be?
It needs to be unified, and we're going to see
Okay.
why in 1 second. So I hit post. Okay, now I get this failed to fetch. Whenever we get failed to fetch, we know something's going on in the back end. Sometimes failed to fetch is something as simple as, oh, I didn't npm start my back end. Other times there's something actually wrong. So it says throw new error where parameter key has invalid undefined value. I'm like, what does that mean? So I got to figure out where that is causing an issue. So what did I just try to do? I tried to post a new comment. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, where's the only place I'm using where? Where is right here. So I'm looking at my where and I'm like, all right, that's coming from my rec.body.post ID. So I want to know what's going on in my rec.body in the first place. So I console log out my rec.body. I save, that reboots the server. I clean the error out. I try and make the API call again. It still crashes because all we did was added a console log. But I scroll back up here and here's my empty object. And I'm like, well, if that's empty, that must mean our API isn't getting a rec.body. So now I go over to my network tab. I scroll all the way down to the comment post that failed, and I take a look at the payload. The payload is the body, right? And I see my post ID 17 is in here. And I'm like, well, how is all of the data in here, but it's not making its way to here? So now I'm narrowing down where the problem can be. The problem either has to be my backend API server isn't parsing JSON, but we haven't touched anything with the JSON, right? We haven't modified any of that. The JSON's been working fine for everything else. So that I'm leaning away from. It's got to be something going on in the front end. So I come back over to the front end and I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, what did we change? Because this was working. What we changed was we added in this headers token. But we can't have two headers. We need one object that has all of the headers in it. So what we narrowed down was this, when we added in the token, was overwriting the headers, which said, hey, you're getting JSON, which is how the backend knew to fill up the rec.body. So we fixed that by just merging these two down together. And by doing that, it fixed the issue.
But then we added in the comment reply in the front end, but then we took it out and then we added in the back end.
So here's what happened. Before, we were just saying find all the comments. So this was bug number 2, right? So we refresh, we do our comment, we hit post, and now we get cannot read properties of undefined reading map. Well, if we go down to the bottom of our terminal, we haven't crashed our backend. So now I'm like, all right, problem's probably not in the back end. Problem's got to be on the front end. Where is it tripping up on this map? It is not giving us a number, so we have to kind of trace through the steps on our own. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to console log out my data and see what comes back. So I save that, I refresh, I make a new comment, I hit post, I look in my console, and what comes out of the console is is that 104? Nope, that's 59. All the way up here on 59 is my comments array. So I pop open that comments array and I'm like, all right, the right data is in there. What's it tripping on? So I go step by step through that. I go, all right, I'm taking that data, I'm taking the comments, and I'm setting it into post. Now, where do I use the posts? I use the posts down here to go over the comments. Okay. This seems to be working because I've got a log out on 104 before any of these errors happen. So that's not the problem. So I keep on going down here and I go, wait a second, I'm doing another map here. Where am I doing that map? I'm doing that map on the comment replies. Well, if I go look at my data in the comment replies, I don't have a comment replies in here. all I'm doing is sending back the comments, not the replies on that comment, as well as the comment itself. So in order to fix that, there are two ways of doing it. One, we could say in the front end, hey, only map over this if the comment replies exist. The other way of fixing it is saying, hey, when we go get the comments, also include the comment replies whenever a new comment gets made. So we save that, we come back over, we refresh, we add in our stuff and hit post, and now we don't get the crash and we can see the new comment that got created. Answer both your questions? You asked a double question without knowing you asked a double question.
It did. I wanted to kind of go back over that again just to see how we got there.
Very, very helpful because 90%, 80% of your day is debugging and 20% is writing new code. And that number goes down a little bit with the more experience that you get, but it still is never zero, right? To this day, I am constantly debugging code that I wrote on my own. So it is very, very important when you're seeing a debugging process to be like, wait, slow down, right? Like, show me that step again, or why did you know to do that? Like, those are really great questions that you're asking, Tara, that I hope everyone is benefiting from. Of, you never get to the point where you just write perfect code, right? There's always debugging that needs to happen. And so you don't see me debugging a ton because normally what I'm doing in class, I'm referencing code that I've already done in the last cohort, right? So I get to cheat a little bit. I get to look like I'm writing perfect code right out of the gate, but in reality, I've already done all of this. I've already debugged it, and I'm using that as a reference. As we get later into the cohort, though, you believe it or not, only have 2 more days of me teaching, and I am out of here. Then Nathan comes in, then Laura comes in, then we get a week of capstone work, which I will be there for, and then we graduate. So as we get towards the end of the cohort, I try and use the reference code less. I try and show you what documentation I'm using, what errors may pop up along the way, because it's important to see not only how do you write the code, but how do you debug the code as you write it. Shannon, you said go over step 10 of Post.js. Where did I do step 10? Backend. I'm still confused. What step? Oh, I actually have a comment there. I do. Thank you. I found it. Okay. So this is back it all the way up. This is, hey, we need to get our backend server up and running. So how do we do that? Well, in server.js, we do express and cores, and we set up our express and cores and all of that. But why do we need a backend in the first place? Because we want to connect to the database and save some information in, right? So it kind of flows through db.js. So server connects into DB right here. DB is in charge of connecting to Postgres. Once we connect to Postgres, Sequelize needs some help. It needs to know what our tables look like. In order to know what it looks like, we model out to Sequelize what the table looks like in Postgres. We make that model in a separate file over here. In order to make that model, we pull in the data types from Sequelize. We make this model called Post, but Post needs access to the database. Then we define this model called Post into the database. Once we tell it, hey, here's what everything's going to look like in the database, we need to give it access to the database itself, which we created right here. So we take this database here and we pass it into the model. Once the model knows about the database, it gives us access to the post itself. We take that post and export it out at the end of this file. So post.js doesn't have the database itself. It waits for db.js to send in the database to the model. Once it does, we get access to the post itself. We export that post down here. And then when we go to our server.js, you'll notice we pull the post in, not from post.js, because post.js doesn't have access to the database. What has access to the database is the post that is coming out of our db.js. Because of that, when we do something like a post.findAll, like we do on our get when we get the post for the home page, it now knows where to go in the database, what table name is, and what all the columns are, because we flowed through the db.js, which gave access to the model, so SQLize knows what to expect. Is that helpful?
Very helpful. Thank you.
I was really like, where is number 10? I don't know what you're talking about. It's been so long since I wrote those comments that I legitimately, and for anyone's sanity, if I went through and numbered everything out like we did at the beginning of this project, we would probably get up to 200 to 300 steps at this point. So give yourself a little credit when you're implementing this in your backends, when you're doing this in your capstones. No one is going to expect you to do all 300 of these steps without anything to look at, right? I, to this day, go to documentation and read it. I, to this day, can't remember how JavaScript functions work that I use all this time, right? All the time. So while you're doing this in your capstone, keep in mind, referencing this blog project is totally fine. And when you go out and you get your first job and you're doing something, chances are you're not only going to have all the documentation of JavaScript and whatever frameworks you're using, you also are going to be able to lean on what you've used in class and use those class projects to figure out how to apply those concepts to whatever you're doing at work. So there is always example code to reference. And if there isn't, there's documentation, and that documentation probably has example code in it as well. All right, final call for questions, whether it's about anything that we have done or it is a question about your capstone. The good news is that we are done with blog. We have covered everything that I've wanted to about blog. So unless you guys have some feature ideas, we are done with the blog. And if you do have feature ideas, we can implement them tomorrow after the capstone check-in. I have no idea what I'm doing on my last class with you on Tuesday. So if you guys have any ideas, feel free to send them over my way, because I am out of content to teach you guys. I will find something, though. Don't think that you guys have off. Don't think I'm giving you a 4-day weekend. We are off on Monday, by the way, for Labor Day. Working with you all is enough. Not working on Labor Day. Corbin, you joke of how to make a pizza. One of our TA's favorite sessions was back when we had like 10 to 15 different instructors instead of me teaching the majority of the class. And the instructor was like, we're going to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And this was like the first week of JavaScript. And the whole like point of the exercise is to be like, you can't just say put peanut butter on the bread. You have to say like, use your left hand, put it on the jar, spin the lid, you know, like break it down step by step. And it's supposed to be an analogy of, you know, programming and how you can't just tell the computer to do something. You have to think step by step. It did not go over as planned, and it ended up being like 20 minutes of class time as he like set up the table and got all the ingredients out and like moved his webcam over to the right spot, and it did not go as planned. And so I think that was cohort 2, and one of the cohort 2 students who has now become a TA was like jokes that every time I ask what should we do in class, she's like, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So we probably will not be making pizza in class on Tuesday, but I will find something for you all to benefit from. But if you do have ideas other than something food related, feel free to send them over my way. And I will definitely consider that for Tuesday's class. Tomorrow is the capstone check-in. If anyone has questions, feel free to Slack me. Otherwise, everyone have a great night. I will stick around for a couple minutes in case questions pop up. But otherwise, I will see y'all tomorrow.
Max, don't forget to invalidate your API key.
Thank you. Why do they not make it easy to do that? Well, I'll just leave it on until the end of this cohort and then invalidate it. They don't have my credit card. What's the worst that could happen?
That's literally one of the worst things to say.
Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will.
Can I ask a capstone question again? I'll come
Sure.
along. Okay. Can I share my screen?
Go for it.
So I have got like 3 of those tables working.
Okay.
So let's say testing now is the username that feeds in. Okay. And let me select a few movies.
How dare you not give Barbie a 10?
Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. But that's also going to show like it doesn't feed ratings twice.
Yep.
Because I don't know, like I set that array. So I submit ratings.
Yep.
This is all set. Now let's go to here. All right. So with the users, here is testing now. So that's fed. And ID is 32. Let's go to movie ratings. That's good. Barbie is 10. Spider-Man is this, and 32 is the user ID.
Very nice.
Now we are on movie genres. Now movie genres are they have their own ID. So 32 is the user ID, which is fine. Movie IDs 49, 50, and 51. So yeah, 49, 50, and 51.
Nice.
That's all set. Final thing is what I'm trying to do is all of these movies have all of these movies have like these genres array.
Yep.
So like these 16, 28, 12, and you can send it back over to TMDB to fetch whatever you want. So that these digits are what I'm trying to save in the rated genre ID.
Okay.
What I did here so far is I map over that array that you just saw in the console.
Yep.
I map over the rated genres array, which the subarray, and then I push in this object.
Yeah.
So every rated genre is added on to this rated genres key.
Okay.
And which is what, and I send this entire object to movie genres data table, which is here. So
Okay.
here is movie IDs. I'm pulling it from the ratings, like you told me to.
Yep.
The genre ID is all is not pulling in. User ID is pulling in. So how do I go about this?
So I'm gonna request. I'm gonna look at your. Okay, so you've got it going in as a string, but when we look at it in, I'm gonna go network and submit, right?
Mhm.
And then if I pull this, where did your, why did your
Um,
API call not go through?
I am not sure. Do you want to say like rate a couple movies and maybe?
There we go. Okay. So here I'm gonna look at your payload and no, it's two movie genres. Right?
Mhm.
Rated genres 9648
So integer.
and then 53. So the only thing I'm confused about is why is it making so many calls?
Because it is like one loop inside another. That was the easiest way for me to do it. Here, let me show you. So that I'm looping over that array and pushing in all the movie rating data in this object. While being inside it, I'm also looping over the rated genres subarray and pushing all that info in this object, and then making a fetch request right inside that loop inside the loop.
I don't think so. In general, it is better to make one API call with an array of all the data and then loop over the data in the back end than it is to make 10 API calls with one item in them each. I don't think that's your problem. But in general, better to make one big one with all the sub data than it is to make 10 little ones with, just the singular data. With that said, your movie genres is sending it in rated genres. It's going to your rated genres, which is going to your rated genre ID, which lines up with your rated genre ID. It's a string, which isn't a problem because it will take an integer and save it like that.
Mhm.
I don't love it's 404ing. Oh, because it's going to it's really movie ratings that we're working with, right? Not movie genres.
I have like separated them out, so technically it's like movie genres. So if you go to the first tab in the Chrome, that's where you'll.
Well, but the post request that is actually creating it in the movie genres is in
Oh,
movie ratings.
gotcha. I see what you mean.
So what we want to do is make sure that in the movie ratings, you're including the rating genres, which is actually happening up in a different fetch request. So this fetch request is going to movie genres as a post,
Mhm.
which doesn't exist. We get movie genres, but we don't have a post to movie genres.
Oh,
So what you need to figure out is, do I want to do all of this work and then include the movie genre body that I'm creating do I want to do all of that and send it into movie ratings? Or do you want to make a separate movie genres API post and then handle that data in there?
Whichever way is easier. Whichever way like works out.
I'm going to let you figure that out.
Okay, so okay, just for a little guidance though, if I choose to create a separate post request here in the backend, it'll be server.post movie genres. And so how will I pull like this?
You're
which
going to
I-
want to res.send back the rating details here so that you
Okay.
can get the ID that got created, so that in your front end, you can take that ID and send it back into your movie genres.
But I don't need to store it in local storage, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you would do something like ID is rating details, data values, ID.
Right.
And then in your movie ratings call here, you would get the response.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's the same thing that we did for users.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, understood. And then that will be a completely separate request. All right, understood.
Correct.
Perfect.
Yep. You got it.
And finally, one question is like, I know we don't want to do like all these fetch requests 1,000 times. So once this maps over and pushes objects into this, how am I gonna like tackle that? So what I'm doing here is like it maps over like every single creates this object one at a time, and after creation posts it right away. How am I gonna do that? Like create a big array of all these objects?
And make one API call. And then on the back end, you're going to loop over that array instead of 10 separate creates. You're going to just do the loop instead of running the loop on the fetch on the front end. You're going to do one fetch and then loop over it in the back end instead.
Gotcha. Understood. Will I lose marks if I'm not able to do this by tomorrow?
No, because you're already sending data to the back end and having it store. The only thing that you don't have working right now is the ability to view the data that you have saved. Which technically you need to get it working at some point, but you're on track. You're not meeting the requirements, but you're very close to meeting all of the requirements. You would just need some page that's either going to show what got saved into the database or show, hey, we think you're a match with this person because of this reason. That's going to be what pushes you over the finish line.
Okay, makes total sense. But that's usually just an easy get request, right? Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm not worried about you meeting the requirements.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, have a good night, everyone.